7th partner call for the Affordable Rental Housing Division. We're glad to have you here with us today. Thanks for joining. We'll give it just another minute and then we'll get started today. Great. Okay. Looks like we have over 100 folks on this call today. Thanks again, everyone, for taking time to join us. It's the July 7th Affordable Rental Housing Monthly Partner Call, and we are going to jump right in. Before we get started, wanting to just take a minute to get grounded in some process agreements. We practice these at ARH, at OHCS, and thank you for practicing these with us to help foster an inclusive environment. Please stay engaged, speak your truth responsibly, listen to understand, be willing to do things differently and experience discomfort and non-closure. Sorry about that. Okay, we've still got folks joining, but we're going to go ahead and share today's topics. We've got a lot to cover today. We will first hear from Tanisha Rosas with our legislative update. We will cover materials from the Housing Stability Council packet, and we'll put a link to that in the chat and reference that packet throughout today's call. And then we'll close out with technical advisories and upcoming engagement. So we have about an hour for this call and a lot to cover. I'm going to hand it over to Roberto Franco. Oh, by the way, my name's Kim Travis. I'm the engagement coordinator at ARH and helping to facilitate these meetings. Today, Roberto Franco is chairing the meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to Roberto to highlight the transactions that are in the Housing Stability Council packet, and then we'll jump to the legislative updates.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Kim. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm your host today for our monthly call with many of you, all of you. I hope your summer is going well. Not as Kim pointed out, Natasha is not with us today, so hopefully she'll be with us at the next partners call. And yes, we do have actually this month for the Housing Council meeting, two transactions, two projects for recommendation. One is a home ARP funded project, and it's the last one from that funding initiative that we're taking, recommending for funding to the Housing Stability Council. So we've committed all of the funding that we had received from Home ARP and added a few more money from Home to make it all work, and that we could have three fully funded projects out of that initiative. The second project is Trinity Place in Sisters, and that one is utilizing 501c3 bonds as part of their financing stack. To my knowledge, and in the last 5 years, I believe that's the first one that we've done or that we've helped facilitate to get that kind of financing. And so with that, upon council approval, Trinity Place should be underway for construction this summer. I think that it's exciting to see that kind of bond financing in it, which probably opens up, hopefully, for others to explore in the midst of shrinking investment or challenging market environments, that we need to have all kinds of tools available to make our projects work. So those are the only two that we're taking this month, and we'll see how the council approves or questions that they may have. But that's it for the transactions.
Thanks, Roberto. And thanks, Kelso, for putting a link in the chat for more information about 501c3 bonds. Moving right along, we're going to turn it over to Tanisha for.
Oh, hello. Oh no.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yep.
Perfect. I'm sorry, y'all. I am traveling, so if you hear any weird noises, that is why. But I couldn't miss a partner call because they're some of my favorite meetings. So, um, like many of y'all know, the legislative session just wrapped up. And so, Kim, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to highlight some of the big important things for Affordable Rental Housing Division. So overall, the OHS investments were smaller than the governor's recommended budget, but that was expected because of what um, the revenue forecast was. And so overall, that is a disappointment, but also we got a lot of funding and a lot of continued service level funding, which is new throughout our agency. So overall, we received a budget of $3.47 billion. Some of the big highlights from that funding include 387.2 million for the Housing Stabilization Division programs, 630 million for the affordable rental housing programs, 111.3 for the homeownership division, and then we got our 170 million expenditure limitation for DRR to keep spending down those funds. Next slide. Perfect. So the next set of numbers are for just the affordable rental housing. I'll give a little shout out at the end if you want to look at some of our other funding. But we got $465 million for our Lyft rental program, and those numbers at the end are the bill number, and there's links when we do our big there's an event later this week. Those links will take you to the website, so if you're one of those people that need to see the words on a page, those links will be available later this week for you to look at those pages. So there's also a bill, House Bill 3145, that creates a $25 million lift set aside for factory built housing. That $25 million is open to both affordable rental housing developments and homeownership developments on top of that. And so the next thing we're going to talk about is permanent supportive housing. We received $80 million for your PSH development. We received $8 million to increase the continuing service level dollars for our current program slots, which is really exciting. So that's going to get more money in those units that are offering PSH. And then we also got 2.5 million to increase the number of PSH rent assistance and service slots to match what should be produced with that $80 million and what will come online in the next biennium. Next, we're going to talk about preservation. Some of the most amazing advocacy I've seen in the legislature recently is for preservation. And so props to those organizations and individuals doing that amazing work. You're the reason that we got this $50 million. So excited to see that happening. One of the more exciting, like unique things that we got is we got $24 million for the Senior Housing Initiative from Representative Marshbill's House Bill 3589. And she found dollars that weren't being utilized in another program efficiently, and she took some of that funding to help build more senior housing. So really excited to see how that's going. And then there's also going to be, as many of you know, our private activity bonds get allocated each year. That's we got 450 million per calendar year. So next slide. So talking about some of the big things from this session, Senate Bill 684 is going to help us stand up long-term financing for our rental housing programs, and that's going to hopefully we're going to do a report that highlights some of the needs that Senator Pham had and saw and attempted to do in the bill in the original draft. So we're going to do a report as we stand up long-term financing for Senate Bill 684. Senate Bill 973 creates some updates to our publicly supported housing requirements. Senate Bill 32 requires additional information for our publicly supported housing data that we have already on our website. So it just adds a little bit, it makes it a little slightly different. So keep an eye out for those updates. They'll be happening this year. Senate Bill 51 provides 3.3 million to Housing Development Center and requires OHS to establish and make our preservation program official. House Bill 2964 created some changes to our current pre-development program, so those will be implemented as directed by the bill. And then House Bill 2087 creates some updates to the Oregon Affordable Housing Tax Credit. And then Senate Bill 48 provides technical fixes to the Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund. Next slide. So I just wanted all of y'all to have this information, and we'll make sure to have y'all get this link out later. But there's going to be a big webinar led by Director Bell on Thursday, July 10th from 2 to 3 p.m. It will talk not just about ARH, talk about all of the agencies, things, and all the new exciting bills. And we'll go a little bit more on what to expect from implementation of all of these funding and all of these new programs. So just want to give that shout out. We'll make sure to put that RSVP in the chat as soon as I'm done talking. So happy to answer questions in the chat, or you are more than welcome to ask those questions on Thursday in front of the whole group. So that is the session wrap up.
Thanks, Tanisha. Any questions or clarifications at this time? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
Hey, Tanisha, do you have any sense on the private activity bonds and the big, bad, ugly federal reconciliation bill? Is it official? Was like the housing credits legislation included in it that would, the 50% to 25% test?
So yes, how that will look for us internally, I've already seen emails where those conversations are happening amongst people who make more decisions and are wiser than I. And so keep a lookout as we update those information, but we are on it. We are starting to do things are official, but no official OHCS updates of that yet.
Thank you.
And Tanisha, this may be a question that you that we'll discuss on Thursday during the webinar, but a question from Lynn McConnell: does OHCS have a timeline to distribute the new rental lift?
I don't have a timeline yet. I know I've heard discussions of timeline. I don't think we've made it like the decision yet. So I'm hoping to get some clarity this week, but it may be a little bit further out for us to be able to dot our I's and cross our T's.
Thank you, Tanisha. And Travis asked in the chat, I know OHCS is just digesting legislative approvals, but any expected timeline on OHCS adopting the new things, such as funding amounts and OHTC updates?
We just had a giant meeting on Friday where I made a whole bunch of managers and people much smarter than me sit in a room and talk about all these things. So we have a whole bunch of stuff written in pencil. But again, nothing is official yet. So just keep an eye out for those TAs and those email blasts, because that will be your official like guiding north. These conversations are happening. Some things will move really quick, of course, but more updates later.
Yes, and I just put the link for Thursday's webinar in the chat. So again, this is a webinar, an hour-long session to debrief from the legislative session. The registration link is in the chat. It's Thursday, I believe at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
2 p.m. Yes. So please feel free to join us there. And then also we will be posting this slide deck on the ARH monthly partner call page. I want to put that in the chat right here now as well. So for these monthly partner calls, we are updating this website, and we will be adding the recordings are available for all of these meetings, and they're archived. So you'll see that on the second link that I put in the chat. And then we're also going to be adding slide decks. So within the next day or two, we will update that ARH monthly partner call page to include this slide deck and the recording as well. Okay, thanks, Tanisha. We really appreciate you joining us today. I know that you're traveling, so hopefully you have safe travels today. We're going to move along, and next on our agenda, let me share my screen, get back to this slide deck. So we've covered legislative update and transactions. Next is portfolio operating expense study, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelso.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kelso. I am the financial strategy analyst on the ARH policy team, and I'm here to talk about our very exciting portfolio operating expense study. So we conducted a comprehensive analysis of the portfolio where we focused on identifying trends in operating expenses and other financial metrics like DCR and vacancy loss. And just to give you a sense of sort of what we've done and where we're going before we get into the numbers, we have a report and we have a data summary, and those will be published to all of you after Housing Stability Council this Friday, where we will also be talking about this. And once you have the report and the data summary, we plan to update the report every year as we get new financials from our partners. And we also plan to have a public dashboard on our website. And I'll get into that more in a little bit, but it will be a way for partners to filter the data the way that they would like to understand our expenses more. And then finally, I think the other things that we're considering as you're looking at this data is that we have the 50 million in session for preservation funding. And we're also evaluating whether we need to potentially readjust our underwriting assumptions as well. So you'll see here a lot of the symptoms, and we're hard at work on what some of our solutions are. So the scope of this operating expense study was 3 years from FY21 to FY23. ProLink, which is our database, that became our system of record in 2020. And so now we have the ability to really easily export data from that system and analyze it. Our data set is 1,820 reports across 3 years, so that's 748 unique properties. And not all properties in our portfolio are required to submit annual financial reports. So you can see that it's mostly projects with 10 or more units funded with LIHTC, home, conduit bonds, lift, risk share, and E&D. And the last time we had sort of a big portfolio-wide study was around FY15. This was in partnership with HTC and with Meyer Memorial Trust. And operating expenses per unit were $5,200. So it's been a while since we've done a big sort of portfolio-wide study. Of course, we're always analyzing our portfolios, and we have lots of ways of doing that throughout the year through property improvement plans and our risk assessment review report. But the last portfolio-wide study was in FY15. And the chart that you see here is sort of just how we got to our main data set, that last row. So two things to note here is that we removed from the properties required to submit financial reports, we removed ALFs, which stands for assisted living facilities, just given their very different financial models. And then we also removed blanks or outliers. And you can see as we've used ProLink and understood its capabilities, those blanks and outliers have decreased as the year's gone on. And we removed very few outliers, so it was mostly blanks. Next slide. So this is the first table of data from our study. There will be lots more in the report and the data summary for you all to review. I'll note that we used mean and not median, so just keep that in mind as we're reviewing that. But you can see in that larger table on the left, we started by looking at expenses and revenue and operating expenses. And one of the big things we saw, of course, is that operating expenses rose from $6,306 to $7,621. This reflects a 9% and 11% year-over-year increase. outpacing inflation rates of 6 and 4%. So that's for operating expenses. For revenue per unit, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. It certainly still increased. It increased by 2 and 9% year over year for revenue. And as you all know, looking at expenses and revenue doesn't measure sort of the true financial picture of our portfolio because it doesn't include things like principal debt payments and deposits to the replacement reserves. So we have DCR here as well. The last two lines are an average of DCR, and then the percent of our overall properties with DCR below 1.1. And so in 2023, this chart shows that 39% of our properties had a DCR below 1.1, which comes out to 273 properties. So I don't think these numbers are a surprise to anyone. I don't think that I know that property owners and all of you are experiencing this and feeling this already. So I don't think this report shows anything new, but it certainly clarifies the financial symptoms that are facing properties in Oregon, and suggests some potential causes. But the more important step will be figuring out the solutions moving forward. Next slide. This is just to give you an example of some of the other analysis that we did. So what you're seeing here at the top is the operating expenses broken out into 6 categories. And you're also seeing the utilities even click down a step more. So you're seeing the specific amounts for electric, gas, water, and garbage, which we've certainly heard a lot from partners. They've seen big increases there. There's lots more that we went into in the report of things we've heard from partners. We looked at property insurance, we looked at property taxes, on-site security. We have a lot of data, and we're excited to be able to share it finally in the study. Next slide. We also looked at it by filtering the data in several different ways. So we filtered by property size, so number of units. We filtered by location, and then what you're seeing here is we filtered by property type is another way that we looked at the data. Yes, I can explain elderly expense on the last slide, and I probably should just remove it. That is just for properties that have our existing elderly and disabled bonds. So it's a very small subset, but they're required to report it separately. So it's just for properties. It's services related to having elderly and disabled bonds. Very small portion of our data set. And then here, yes, so here we divided it by property type: general family, senior, PSH, and other. Next slide. Great. So as I mentioned, we will be releasing the report and the summary early next week. And then this summer, we're working on the dashboard. So the dashboard will be available on our website for all partners, and that you will be able to filter by both financial data and then our filtering options. So for example, you could come in and see what is the average cost per unit for on-site maintenance in Multnomah County, for example. And this is our starting list of what we hope to have on this dashboard. So operating expenses, including lots of different click downs. And then filtering options, so region, 2 types of ways to look at region, property size, and property type. But I'm curious, and please just leave your comments in the chat for now. I'm curious if there's any other types of data or filtering options that would be useful that you would like to see. Any other types of expenses or filtering options, please leave it in the chat right now, and we will definitely see if we have that supported in the data to be able to share, if it's not already on this list. And I'll leave it at that, and if there's any questions, I think we have a little bit of time.
Thanks, Kelso. Any questions for Kelso now? I don't see any. Okay, we've got a few chats coming in. Oh, great. People are responding to the request about the dashboard date for the dashboard.
I do see the question about how much of the operating expenses is included in resident services. So that's a conversation that we've been having. The standard template that we use and that property owners fill out for their annual financial reports is based on the HUD chart of accounts, and it does not include a line separation for resident services. So we are actually not able to separate out in operating expenses how much what the resident services are. And so we're definitely considering in future years if that's something that we're able to see. And then on the question of underwriting standards, that we're looking into that for sure. I think that's something that now that we sort of see the symptoms and we we've known the symptoms, but now that we've seen them in this study, we are definitely looking into seeing if that's something that we can do.
Great. And then a question from Robin, will we be able to filter for geographic areas?
Yes, we'll certainly be able to filter by county. That's really accessible in our data. And if there's another geographic way that you'd like to see the data, please let us know and we can see if we're able to.
Great. All right, we are going to move along. I put a link in the chat for the Housing Stability Council packet. And we're going to talk through some of those elements now. And please do keep using the chat if you have other thoughts about the data filtering options for the property expense dashboard. Please continue to keep adding those. And thanks again, Kelso. Okay, so we are back here on our agenda. We've had the legislative update, transactions, portfolio operating expense. Now we're going to move to talk about the ORCA. And in the Housing Stability Council packet, there is the ORCA July update memo, and then the ORCA framework update recommendation. So I put the link in the chat, and I'm going to share my screen and briefly just to show you where we are in those memos. And Roberto is going to talk us through some of the key elements within those memos.
Yeah, so I think there's three more items relevant that part of the council packet. So the update, our memo for the ORCA and the pipeline, 9% deals. All of those projects that were able to meet the thresholds for selection, we have 9 that we're highlighting for the council at this coming meeting. Those are by now should be working in the work center. At the Housing Stability Council, we're only mentioning, we're not making any recommendations, but just highlighting what projects there are. Everyone that is moving forward, every project moving forward should be working now on through the work centers to complete the impact assessment application. And you've got a certain amount of time to complete that. And if the project and the application still meets the standards and impact assessment, then we'll take them to council for recommending the gap financing that was paired with the 9%. So just to make it clear, we're not recommending projects this time, but just highlighting or indicating or informing what projects we have in the mix there. I've been told that there is already 9% that completed its impact assessment application, which means then in our cadence of ORCA, that gives us the ability to start reviewing. Because if you recall, this is first come, first ready, first review application that we're trying through the ORCA. So the 8 of you that are still working on your work centers, please complete, do it, and reach out to us if you have questions. as it is always the case, we didn't have enough 9% tax credits to be able to spread more to more projects. But I think that we have the means that of keeping an eye on some of the ones that weren't funded. It's certainly possible to split, move or shift to 4% or stay with the 9 if there is a chance that some project may not, which it could happen, that one of the 9s does not get to completion and the credits are returned, that then we're able to look at other projects there as well. Then I think in the update, we're also doing a short reflection about the year that the ORCA has been in place. And it's a high level review reflection of our own, but I think it's suffice to say that of the many things or various things that we set out to do with the ORCA, it seems that I think we are accomplishing a lot of them. Of course, like any other system, there's always room for improvement. But I think we've been sharing with you in many places that unlike the NOFAs, I think we're moving through the ORCA applications faster than we had through the NOFAs. And that's a good indication that there's flexibility, that there's opportunities to fix a project or make cures, and or for a project that doesn't get funded, like in the NOFAs, you have to wait another year. But through the ORCA, there are opportunities for cures, there are opportunities for improvements before we get to a final commitment for projects. We have now in place a whole group and team that helps us with the process of applications that we didn't have before. And we've got a group of technical advisors that are there available to guide or help navigate the system. Our production and our resources staff have also increased so that we have the ability to move through the projects as quicker as we can. It is always unfortunate that we cannot fund every project, and that's why we have a wait list. That because we run out of the gap funding, we run out of private activity bonds, so we have projects in waiting. What for new investments are coming that soon will be have an idea how much resources will be available. So that's part of the highlight. It's with the ORCA or in the memo to council, but the 1 year, call it, I don't know, 1 year anniversary of the ORCA. So we're excited that again we're making progress. There's more work to do for sure, and there's always improvement. Some of which we'll also highlight a little bit here, how to make it better all the time with your participation and feedback that we receive. I'll stop there if there are any questions about the 9% or any other reflection on the ORCA, what I call the 1 year anniversary.
Yeah, thanks, Roberto. We do have some questions in the chat. Let's see. Will OHCS forward allocate credits to meet the pent-up pipeline with the passage of Trump's HR 1? And I don't know, we may not have the answers here today for some of these questions. There's another question, has the 9% increase been priced into the existing 9% applications, or is more 9% going to be available?
Well, I think we have to take a look at what that increased in the 9% represent for us, which then we'll probably have to look at our QAP as how we make the allocations as well. So so it's been a couple of weeks of all of these major announcements or changes in our own legislative investment and this new one. So we're taking all of that into account, how one may impact the other one. So at this point, we don't have one answer for you. We don't have an answer for you, but that is what we're working on, how all of this, the national news and national events also mix with what we have that just happened not too long ago.
And then we have another question for projects that received their notice of approval through impact assessment, but have yet to be granted a letter of intent. When, how is OHCS making determinations? Are projects being ranked on readiness at all?
So that is, I believe, tied to the state investment. Again, we created a wait list because we ran out of gap resources and private activity bonds as well. There's still a few bills, even investment bills, that I don't believe have been fully signed by the governor. So we're waiting for that to happen as well before we can really make a decision on how we're going to go look at the projects on the wait list. So we anticipate that with the adoption of the update to the framework and going through an analysis of all of these investments and pairing with national announcements, we, in the coming weeks, we'll be sharing with you either through a technical advisory. I don't believe we'll be ready by the next legislative, I'm calling it open house that Anisha mentioned.
Thursday.
Yeah, that's our plan, that in the coming weeks, we'll be coming out with more details on how and when can we take projects to Housing Stability Council, get that approval and get that LOI that the projects need.
Thanks, Roberto. Question from Pooja. When you say first come first with the 9%, so we were given a 30-day deadline to submit the application, so that seems contradictory. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, what I meant is that, yes, you all have 30 days to finish and submit your impact assessment. Uh, but if we have some already, like I said, there's one that is already completed, it doesn't preclude us to wait and start reviewing them. So we can start reviewing them. So it isn't, so I should correct on that. It's not first serve, but it's really first ready, first review that we can take a look. But we're not shortening your time if you want to use and need the whole 30 days for submitting the impact assessment.
Okay, a couple more questions here. Can OHCS speak to their plan for releasing 2026 4% tax credits? Will it be similar to 2025, i.e. based on readiness to proceed, or will be rolled out differently?
It'll be similar. And again, it ties back to how much gap resources do we have and how much can we do for 4% in tax credits. And that's the exercise that we need to do in the coming weeks.
Yeah, okay. And then another question from Robin. So August, question mark, not July, to find out about moving projects off the wait list.
That's correct. August probably what we're looking at, but I'm I don't how do I say this? Anyway, that's probably our plan, but I want to make sure that we have enough time to do our own due diligence to make sure that we are still able to meet the commitment that we've made, but not in July, likely in August. But so we're looking at again how fast we can move.
Hey, thanks, Roberto. I think we're moving on to talk about the ORCA recommended updates. And then we'll be ready to close out this meeting. So I can pull up again, I'll pull up the memo. So again, this is in the Housing Stability Council packet. I'll put the link in the chat again and just pull up the memo so you can see what we're talking from. But go ahead, Roberto.
Sure, yeah. If you're able to look at the packet or browse the packet that we submitted, there's really not a lot much different than what we proposed or brought forward as a heads up to council last month. So part of those update to the framework, it's still the clarifying the readiness. So making sure that when we say, for example, 6 months to complete financial eligibility, for example, that it's when everything should be wrapped up, meaning that we've gotten the all of the documentation, all of the expected information for us to do a review and to be able to wrap it up in 6 months, for example. So it's still, again, clarifying just readiness as we did last month. The second one is also on leverage test. So we want to make sure now that we know, have an idea what, well, more than an idea, we know what investment we have. We want to be able to spread it as much as we can. So we want to introduce a leverage test requiring applicants in their financial eligibility review that they've done all they can to bring other non-state, non-OACS, including debt, into the project, especially where if the subsidies or the state financing exceeds the 70% of the development budget. So this is where, again, making our resources last as much as we can. So we're going to ask for every application, that, especially at a larger size, what other resources it can bring into the mix there. Now, we are all aware that some jurisdictions, some communities, some projects, some organizations may not have the ability to attract other resources, but we still want to see what diligence they've done in order to get to that, meaning that there is or there isn't any other non-OHCS, non-state resources. The gap only project size limit, we've also mentioned that last time, and we're still sticking to it, that we don't have enough state resources to do gap only projects like the first time around. First time around because we didn't have a LIHTC offering. Now we do, especially in the 4%. We know how much we're getting in the private activity bonds. Now with the federal action, there's also the opportunity how to utilize more of the private activity bonds. But we are going to ask that any project that is 50 units or more, and if they are applying or requesting gap resources only, we want to see a justification why they couldn't move to a LIHTC financing as well. So LIHTC and gap financing, we want to see that. So just putting out there to think about your projects, how best to utilize the state resources as well as LIHTC that we have. Then we have the resource allocation, especially on set-asides. I think what we like to see is that when set aside resources for we run out of it in that particular set aside and not enough to fund a large project, that we want to have the ability to pool what remains on those set asides in order to fund the next viable project, especially if their ask is within a certain limit. Large projects, as we mentioned, 50 or more units, or we want to make sure that, again, there's that justification, or if your project is large and we cannot fund it, even with the pool resources, it may stay there, and we're going to go to the next project that is asking less. So we're introducing that as well, because we don't want to see funding that is left in a set aside go unused if we can fund another smaller project that is ready to go and only needs a certain amount of available resources. Then the last one that we have is the removing the limit on the preservation projects. So those are the same. The only shift in here, and that we're not, because we're not ready to really share it, is still in work, is the set-asides. Last month, we did talk about shifting the set-asides from Western or Eastern and Central, and look at it differently now. That still requires some review, and I think that we are hoping that in the next week or two, we'll have a better idea how we can offer that set aside. And that should give you an idea of, again, what's available for your projects, depending on the location or the geographic location that is located. So that's what we're recommending. But I think we've said this earlier, and Tanisha, I think, mentioned that as well, that now with the mix and the changing of the threshold of PAV, we have another consideration to make before we can come out with the final recommendations. certainly that change of the 50% to 25%, it creates opportunities, I mean, for more PABs available, because if with a 25%, that means we're only funding a small portion of the project with private activity bonds in order to utilize the LIHTC. But that's only good if we have enough gap funding that we can fill some of the areas, or if that truly creates more available PAVs, we don't have enough gap funding to keep offering. So it's good, but it's also a challenging state for us trying to figure that out. But again, I think we have our work cut out for the next couple of weeks, trying to decide how best to make the resources available.
Thanks, Roberto. We have a few minutes if there are some questions, and we do have a question in the chat from Robin. Is this for waitlist projects too? And I think you're referring to the the leverage test. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Roberto, so the question is the leverage test for waitlist projects?
Yeah, because that is part of the update ORCA, I mean, in the resources in the ORCA manual as well.
Yeah. And then question, have you heard anything from lenders about willingness to include PAB with other TEBs?
We have not, as again, the news about the PABs, that just was Friday. So no, we have not had that opportunity, but that's certainly in the mix. So it's lenders and investors. So we may be able to, again, use a lower threshold, but it doesn't mean that that we have the credit pricing at a level that makes all of that really financially feasible. So we're in all of that mix, we need to consider the credit pricing as well as, yes, the investors as well.
Thanks for your questions. I'll just pause for another minute here and see if we have any other questions before we start to wrap up. Feel free to come off mute if you want to ask a question or continue to use the chat. Okay. Thanks for that, Roberto. Appreciate that. We're going to wrap up here. We've got a couple of reminders and then we will close out. We still have the consolidated plan survey open. That will be open through September. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for that. Please feel free to distribute that as well to your business partners and colleagues that aren't able to attend. We'd love to have a really solid survey response for the consolidated plan. So thank you for that. And just another plug for this Thursday, July 10th at 2 p.m. Director Bell will provide an overview of the 2025 legislative session, and I'll put that link in the chat again as well to register for that session. And then finally, the next partner call will be later this month. It's July 28th, so it'll be here before we know it, as the August Housing Stability Council meeting, I believe, is on August 1st. So we have 2 partner calls this month. And we will have more updates at that time. We'll know a lot more about the status of some of these items that we've discussed here today. But and yes, Stephanie, the session with Director Bell on Thursday will be recorded and provided on the website. Yes. So let me just get that link to you in the chat for those who joined a little bit later and maybe don't have access to the links. And we'll just pause to see if anybody has any additional questions. That's to register for the webinar on Thursday. And then I have a link to the consolidated plan survey as well. So we appreciate those who've already completed the survey, and please pass it on to others. Great. Okay, well, we are ahead of schedule today, so Roberto, I'm just going to turn it over to you for any closing remarks before we adjourn.
No, other than really just appreciate the opportunity to share with all of the partners, and wish you all a good summer, remaining summer. Hope you have something fun planned. So otherwise, we'll see you next time in August. Thank you.
Later in July.
Sorry, late in July. Sorry, my bad.
But you know how to find us. I think everybody here, feel free to reach out in the meantime. But we thank you all for joining us today, and take care. Bye, all.